Pat, let's get straight to the news here. Tragically, the brother of Macho Man Randy Savage and the certainly a guy with a great gimmick, Lanny Poffo, this week passed away at the age of 68. We all got introduced to Lanny Poffo kind of in the mid to late 80s. Again, when kayfabe was still alive, we didn't know that Lanny Poffo was the brother of Randy Poffo, a.k.a. Randy Savage. So kind of a, not a big-time wrestler, but found a great gimmick in The Genius. Used to spit out some great poems during the promos. During that era, obviously being linked up and managing Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig in early 1989, which was very interesting. I would argue, one of Lanny Poffo's most, I think, memorable poems was right after Randy Savage defeated Hacksaw Jim Duggan to become then, at the time, the king of the World Wrestling Federation. And folks, if you didn't watch it, go on YouTube, watch the coronation, watch the ceremony of all those great heels in the ring celebrating Randy Savage and Sherry Martel as the new king and queen of the WWF, whether it was at the time the WWF Tag Team Champions, the Brain Busters, one of my favorite all-time teams, the Powers of Pain, the Boss Man, Akeem, the $1 Million Man, Dino Bravo, Greg Valentine, the Widowmaker, Barry Windham, ladies and gentlemen, was in the ring as well. Just a great collection of heels to honor Randy Savage. But that poem during the coronation by his brother, Lanny, was memorable. Sad day in professional wrestling this week, folks, as Lanny Poffo passes at the age of 68.
Yeah, Lanny Poffo, man. So, to my recollection, and stop me if I'm wrong, because you're much older than I am. Wasn't he one of the first guys to do a moonsault on TV?
Yeah, he's actually one of the original kind of, high flyers, which was unheard of during that time because there was pretty much a lot of ground wrestling during the 80s.
Yeah, man. And he wrote some very clever poems, like the Hill one you mentioned. Obviously the Brain Busters. I'm going to put my money down that that's FTR's favorite tag team. But, Lanny Poffo was great, man, had a great way with words, was also a great ambassador for the Macho Man brand. Now, I can't believe that you didn't know this, but I had mentioned it. Apparently, Lanny Poffo had a party trick where he would perform autofellatio. So for those of you who don't know what that means, he could suck his own dick. That was the rumor. Pardon my French, but it's an adult show anyway. So that was one of the party tricks that he could perform. And, there was videos about him talking about it. Marty Jannetty would talk about it. All the people would talk about it. So, he was kind of infamous for being able to perform that trick. But, definitely a guy who left a mark in the business. And as I said before, a great ambassador for Macho Man's brand. And, definitely one of the nicer guys, I would say, in the business. But, sad loss, for those of the people that knew him. And, I'm sure he's somewhere in the great beyond with the Macho Man. And, they're reunited again. So, yeah, certainly, a sad loss in the business. But rest in peace, Lanny Poffo.
Absolutely. And I had the privilege, I think, as well as a lot of our collective friends, man, back in the spring of 2018, our good friend, a big fan of the show, one of my members of my legal counsel team, the great James Anthony Barricato, was gracious enough to have Lanny Poffo visit a wonderful venue in nightlife in Hudson County for some time. It's no longer with us, Cooper Place in Weehawken. I had a chance to meet Lanny Poffo, take a picture with him and just, chat up a little wrestling with him. He was so gracious, such a gentleman. You could tell the way he spoke about his brother. He loved Randy, and he was wearing his brother's Hall of Fame ring, certainly. And, again, I hate to use the words, this guy wasn't used right. And, a lot of marks fall into that trap, Pat, about, I like this guy, and they weren't used right by this promoter or that promoter. I think Lanny Poffo found a great gimmick in The Genius. He wasn't, I don't want to say he wasn't the best worker, but he wasn't a guy, I think, that, at the time Vince McMahon looked at him as a great accessory for Kurt Hennig, who was clearly the bigger star of that pairing. And Lanny Poffo did a great job. He would go on to manage the Beverly Brothers in the early '90s in WWF. Again, just a great personality, a guy who, just from everything I'm reading, was never full of himself, was just very gracious to deal with. And again, a gentleman. It's a great loss for the wrestling community, Pat, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, pardon me, I'm taking some sips of some hot soup, some hot vegetable soup right now because it's so friggin' cold out here. But yeah, Lanny, the thing about him that I find interesting is that similar to his brother, he had a very unique voice. You know, Randy had a very unique voice because of an accident, got hit with a baseball in the throat. But Lanny had a very distinct voice, kind of sounded like a tenor, like an opera singer almost. And his delivery was always great. The way he would pronounce things phonetically, it was very unique, very memorable. When I was a kid, sometimes I would confuse him for Mark Marrow because they kind of had a pretty similar look. Yeah, right? Tell me, they kind of had a similar thing going on with like that kind of semi-quasi shaggy Kentucky waterfall mullet thing. And then they had, like the goatee, the handlebar thing kind of going on there a little bit. I could have seen them, being doppelgangers. But, yeah, Lanny definitely had a great voice. And, again, a memorable character. And, like, when you get into the business, it doesn't matter what you do, whether you're a referee, a manager, a wrestler, an announcer, whatever the case might be, you get into the business to be memorable, and Lanny Poffo to me is memorable. You know what I mean? I think anybody who ever had the privilege of seeing him as a manager, remembered him. And he certainly stood out, whether it was through him performing a moonsault, his poems, his ability to speak. Lanny Poffo definitely was a memorable character. And in my opinion, somebody that's quite influential. I think some people have taken from him. Damian Sandow is definitely a guy that comes to mind. Very, very similar. But yeah, definitely, a loss for the wrestling business. I mean, look, anytime we lose good guys, it's sad.